To whom much is given, much is tested. Get arrested, guess until he get the message. I feel the pressure under more scrutiny. And what I do, act more stupidly. Bought more jewelry, more Louis V.
Hi guys, this is Uni from Universe, and thank you for channeling into my channel today. So today I wanted to talk about something very serious or very realistic in a way, and something that I thought it will be helpful for you guys as I have come to think about a certain subject in my life. So first of all, I am currently living in New York, and for the past 2 years almost, it will be my 2 years on the 6th of May, which is in a week. I would have lived in New York for 2 years, and I just said that right. And so I thought it was about time for me to share with you guys some tips about living in New York. And for today's subject, that will be my top 5 budgeting that you have to consider before moving to New York or before considering to moving to New York. And I just want to explain why I came to think about this subject. It's because if you have followed me through Instagram, or if you've ever seen any of my videos, I did talk about my lifestyle, as in like I'm originally from Seoul, Korea, and I mostly grew up there, studied and worked there until my late 20s, except for some time off that I lived in England when I was little. But ever since I met my husband, we have been traveling outside of Korea, and we have lived in Jakarta, which is the capital of Indonesia, for 3 years. And then after that, a little gap in between, we arrived in New York 2 years ago. And so our lifestyle hasn't really been like nomad, as in we're traveling all the time, and we're like, we're kind of working with no fixed office. We've always worked and lived in certain city, but like in a span of 2 or 3 years, and that's been allowing us to experience different lifestyle, like living and coping with different challenges in life, and also like trying to adapt in different cities. And so now, after almost 2 years of living in New York, we did not actually expect this, but the pandemic of coronavirus has definitely hit hard on everybody. And since we are here to work, and we are technically like not a citizenship holder or green card holder or anything like that, we just can't stay here anymore. And so with my pregnancy and with a lot of things on our hands, we have decided to move out next month. So we are going to live in France, which is my husband's country, for the first time, and it will be another big challenge for us. So because I'm thinking about all this move, I got to think about all of the advantages and disadvantages and the cost and whatever about living in New York, and I thought I'll share it with you guys on my top 5 biggest costs of living in New York. And so here it is. Okay, so the very first cost that I must mention, obviously, is rent. So ever since we arrived in New York, on the first night actually, we arrived at the doorstep of my husband's business partner, literally with suitcases in our hands, and we just went to his apartment at 11 p.m. when we got off JFK, got off at Uber, and we went to his apartment, and we literally just crashed there for almost like 2 weeks. And for 2 weeks, I had no idea where to move next. I had no idea what the 5 boroughs are, even the fact that there are boroughs in New York. What are the different living conditions? What do you need to consider in order to find an apartment? What is the standard rent? Is there a deposit? What are the documents? I didn't know anything. I just knew it was hell. I just knew that it's somewhat expensive, but I didn't even know to what extent that cost was. And I was just thrown in the world of internet to find out where I should live next. And so we have experienced a number of long-term Airbnbs, a number of sublets, roommate situations, until about 6 months into living in New York, we finally got our own apartment under a sublet. And so my top budget in terms of living in New York has definitely been the rent, whether it be using a long-term Airbnb, a sublet, or your own lease. The rent is probably the highest cost that you need to consider when you're living in New York. Now, I want to give you an idea what that amount is. So for example, we arrived at my husband's partner's doorstep, which was in Upper East Side, and it is definitely one of the highest rents areas in New York, and so we couldn't afford that in the beginning. So immediately, ever since we moved out from that apartment and went around to different places, we moved across the bridge to Brooklyn. And in Brooklyn, there's also many different areas that has different cost of living in terms of rent. And in doing that, I sort of became an expert in knowing like which area costs what and what you can expect with a certain amount of money. And so within Brooklyn, we kind of lived in the middle part, which is like Bed-Stuy or Clinton Hill, where it's relatively known for its security, good neighborhood with nice residential buildings, and sometimes nice brownstones if you get lucky. And you don't get that crazy like luxury high-rises, but you get to have a lifestyle in the way that you want. And so we first off started with long-term Airbnb rent, which I wouldn't really consider as rent, so let me just skip this part. And so we first started off with roommate situation. Now, we are a couple, and so even if we find a roommate situation, we always have to look for an apartment that will allow couples, because not every apartments are allowing roommates who are couples, because it just means you have two people who are, you know, taking up more space in terms of even the common space, or like in terms of electricity or water. They always consider you're almost like double than one person. And so you have to first know, like, if you're moving in as a couple, with the landlord or the leaseholder or whoever it is who's taking care of this, would they allow couples to move in? But we fortunately found an apartment that had different rooms, but the room that I ended up taking was a master bedroom with our own private bathroom inside the room, so that we don't have to use the bathroom with other people inside the house. And that was great. But now that I come to think of it, for that one room with a private bathroom inside, we paid $1,800 per month. And let me just tell you, after moving out from that apartment, which we started to live in our own apartment just by ourselves, how much rent we paid. So from then on, we paid, ever since, $2,000 per month. Now, for us, it was the most highest cost of living in New York, and so we tried not to go too much over the top and try not to have so much of this fixed cost on our hands, because yes, we could have found like another bigger apartment or nicer apartment, maybe even in Manhattan, but we just didn't want to go like, you know, a certain percentage over our income to spend so much money on our fixed cost and then have to reduce and save on the other parts of our life. And so we literally kept it at $2,000. And this apartment, which I'm living in right now, which you can actually check out in my apartment tour video, you can see that for a 2-bedroom apartment, I managed to find at $2,000. And so all in all, that's my cost of rent. But that's because I did a lot of research. I went everywhere and I tried not to go over a certain budget that I set for myself. And I would say, as an advice, that don't try to go more than 30% of your total income. Whether you're a couple or whether you're a single person, don't go over 30% and go over the top where you can't afford this fixed cost. But that's our first biggest cost of living in New York. Okay, so rest assured, this video is going to be a very talkative video. So if you want to get a snack, get some popcorn, get that in front of you. But I just, have all this idea in my head this morning, and so I'm going to spill it out. So the second biggest cost of living in New York, I would say, is social life. Now, before I moved to New York, there was one of my favorite books, which is called Free Food for Millionaires, which is by a Korean American author called Min-Jin Lee. And it was literally a girl who literally just graduated from college. In the story, I think it was Princeton, and she lived with her parents until she found her job. And afterwards, she ended up moving out of her parents' house because she couldn't cope with them. So she ended up going from like friend's house to another. And then she was just explaining all the cost of living in New York that was really pressure on her without a proper job. And one of the things that she mentioned in the book was that the social life cost in New York is humiliating, because just to go out to have a couple of drinks with your friends, or at least dinner with your friends, and then you would consider having to come back home on an Uber ride at least, because you probably wouldn't consider taking the subway. You have to consider all the transportation, and then in the end, like, you have a couple of hundreds of dollars sometimes to spend, because a drink could go from like $12 to like $20. And so I just didn't know about that before I moved here, and it is very true. Now, myself, we moved here as a couple, as a married couple, and we weren't crazy about nightlife or like going out to drink every day. We're not such a drinker anyways, so we were more of foodies, and we wanted to explore like nice restaurants and famous restaurants that we know that we should go to, check out in New York. And so we weren't super careful, but we try to spend our anniversary or important dates by going to these restaurants. And let me just say that some of the most extravagant restaurants we've ever been to have been in New York. It's not in Paris, where we went to our first 3-star Michelin restaurant. It was definitely in New York. And let me just say, for our first anniversary dinner that we went to, I think it's a 2-star Michelin restaurant. It's a Korean chef, and it's a very celebrated restaurant. It's called Jangsik, and we had like 2-course meal, both with wine pairing, with a lot of free desserts because we knew the pastry chef. But guess how much we spent at the end of the day, because we even tipped more because of more dessert, was $900. That's like half of our rent. And it's ridiculous because, the experience is great, like the servers were great and everything, but it's just so much, and we never even expected to spend that much money. But that was like the most amount of money that we've ever spent on a restaurant bill, with no corporate card, with nothing supportive. We've just spent our money on it. I guess we could have even gone on a small trip. But yeah, so we had that kind of experience in New York, and I'm not saying every single dinner will cost you $900. You can definitely, put your head around it. I have had friends who try to actually eat before they go out for a drink, because they know they don't want to spend that much money by going out to drink every single day. So they would actually plan to eat at home, eat whatever just to fill up their stomach, and they go outside and spend their money on drinks, which is cheaper than having to go for a meal and then tip the waiter and all of these things. And so there's a way that you can live around it, but it's just that the cost is still like, it's relatively high. And I think there are even some bars who would charge you even $30 for a glass of cocktail, and you never know where you could end up, because you could, but you don't. And there's just like average cost. And so if you are a person who likes to go out and socialize with people, I think that is one other cost that you should consider about New York. Okay, third cost, and I wouldn't say it's the biggest, but it's something that you consider, is the transportation. Now, I've already talked about some Uber rides in my second point, and Uber, just to talk about it, or there's other services other than Uber. There is Lyft, there is also Via, which is pretty recent. I think there was Juno, but I think they went bankrupt and not many people are using that anymore. So there's practically Uber, Lyft, or Via. I don't think there's any other that I know of. Yeah, I think those are the big three. So even within those three, you can do a big comparison. But I think the three of them somehow fall in similar ranges. And I think compared to Europe, when I use just Uber in like Paris or like Italy or Portugal when I was traveling, it tended to be much cheaper. It was like either 1/3 or half the price that I had to pay here. And so here, where I live now in Brooklyn, if I wanted to go to into the city, I would definitely pay more than 20 bucks for that ride, because I'm crossing a bridge. There's some way until it will take me to near the highway to cross a bridge, and then after the bridge you'll definitely have to go through all these roads, and there's traffic and whatever, and so it will take average like 20 bucks, which is pretty expensive. I wouldn't consider taking an Uber or Lyft ride every time I have to go to the city when I can just take the subway. Now the subway, I wanted to show you the Metro card. I didn't realize my bag is actually right here. So the Metro card, I know you must have seen it, looks something like this. I don't know if you've seen the movie Ocean's 8, where there's 8 female cast of the Ocean's 11 movie version.
Exactly.
And then Awkwafina pulls a joke about Metro cards to send.
I was wondering if I can get a Metro card, because I'm skateboarding in from Queens like every day. Can I get a Metro card?
I don't have a Metro card.
You don't have a Metro card?
I don't have a Metro card.
What are you, a tourist?
You're fascinating.
That's it. You can just throw me one deb for a Metro card, that's it?
How about this? We steal $50 million, I'll buy everybody Metro cards. How's that?
Okay.
And I actually met Awkwafina on set one time when I was working as an extra, and I pulled that joke to her, saying like, can you get me a Metro card? But so Metro cards. So there are, I might have a footage, I'm gonna put it here. So there are, when you first arrive to the city or you are here for a short period of time, you wanna get this Metro card first. So when you get this Metro card, you have to pay for the card. I totally forgot because it's been such a long time I got a card. But anyway, every time after you get one of these cards, you can just top up. And the subway does not give you any like discounted rate for taking for a longer period of time. But if you consider one single ride of a subway ride is like $2.75 for adult. And if you know that you're going to take it more than twice a day, either because you're going to work and coming back from work, or you might have to take it a couple of times during the day to go to wherever you need to go, then instead of just topping up with monetary value, you might want to top it up with time. If a single ride is $2.75, and let's say you do 2 times a day, and then let's say you do that for a whole week, it will become $38.50. So $38.50 for 1 week times, let's say 4 weeks a month, that will become $154. So you kind of do save in a way that if you do take at least the subway 6 days a week, because you might go somewhere on the weekends too, you might as well just top it up for a month, and then you just keep using it unlimited, because it is unlimited once you take it during the course of time. If you don't, and if you just top it up on value because you won't take it as often, then it's totally up to you. So let's say you are living your life just out of a Metro card, then let's say you top it up for a month and it's $132. I considered to do that and just use the Metro as much as possible was better. And sometimes if you want to transit in between the buses that are mentioned as MTA buses, you can also take with this card, so it's pretty great. And because I wasn't taking so much Uber, transportation for me wasn't too much of a cost. But then let's say you are living in New Jersey, for example, which I have seen a lot, and you need to commute to Manhattan City or sometimes Brooklyn, then there is this train system called PATH in between New Jersey and Manhattan, but PATH do not allow you to have any of these advantages of topping up for a month. And so every single ride you have to pay $2.75 if I'm not mistaken. So all those costs actually just mount up. And so transportation in New York isn't the most expensive. And because you have the subway and you can sort of walk in and out of the subway station, it's pretty easy to do that, I think, which is the biggest advantage of living in New York. When I see videos of bloggers who lived in LA and they've talked about how a hell of a traffic jam there is, and how much it's such a hassle to just meet people after work during weekdays because there's so much trouble of getting to places and parking your car and all of these hassle. It is clear that New York City is so much more compatible in moving from one place to another. Even during the day, if you have a lot of meetings, you can go remotely from one place to another. You can just use the subway or like public transportation, and you can just walk a couple of blocks to get to the subway. That's really handy, and that's one thing that I appreciated about living here. Now that I'm pregnant, and I think one of the reasons that I really didn't want to stay in New York with a newborn is that I do not want to take my newborn on the subway. If you've seen the conditions of the subway in New York, they are not the best. I have definitely seen better because I come from Seoul, where it's super, super clean. Everything is secured. You have a door in between your platform and the train because it's for security reasons. It's super new. There's no rats or whatsoever. It's so clean that you just can't let like homelesses onto the platforms. It's just so much more cleaner and so much more secured. So having seen that and experienced that, New York subway is such a hell and so dirty and so badly managed in terms of like all the delays and whatever. But I can't complain. But with a baby, I don't want to do that. And so that's one of the reasons we are deciding to move out. But that was my point 3 of living in New York. Now, the fourth point I want to mention is the food shopping and groceries. First of all, I actually already filmed this as part of my video, but I must have missed to press the button film. So I'm doing a voiceover right now, and I hope you guys understand that. So when you move to a new country or a new city, obviously food shopping is part of a big culture of what that city is like, and also you have to know a lot of things in order to get the things that you want to buy. In New York, probably it could be similar in other states too, but I have no idea or I have no comparison. But there are definitely some popular grocery stores like the Whole Foods or Trader Joe's. I didn't know any of those before coming here, but now that I'm here, I do know that they are two big grocery chains that people usually support and go to buy their groceries. The Whole Foods tends to be a lot more on their expensive side, and they have a lot more organic produce items from freshly, picked fruits, vegetables to poultry, meat, cheese, everything. And also Trader Joe's definitely has all of those, but very much on the lower side in terms of the price range, and it tends to be a lot cheaper. So there's definitely a group of people who loves to go to the Whole Foods versus there's definitely a group of people who loves to go to Trader Joe's. Now, if you live in New York, you know that there's not only Whole Foods and Trader Joe's. And especially during the pandemic, I've seen a lot of bloggers who went to Whole Foods and they'll film the aisles of frozen food and they say, all the food is gone. But I mean, look around. There's so many other small little delis, grocery stores, bodegas, whatever you call it. And there's so many other ways you can buy food. I think that last part just got cut. But yes, so all in all, grocery shopping and spending money on food isn't the biggest cost in New York, and it's also actually pretty well managed. And so you can actually, do pretty well, and you can also save some budget of going outside to eat by doing grocery shopping instead and just making your food at home, which I do a lot, and which is why I'm spending so much money when I go on restaurants, just because I know I can compensate for all the money that I've saved before. But well, that's just me. Okay, and the last point I wanted to talk about was something, I don't know, like I was actually thinking what would be the last point. And I would like to say for now, from what I know, it would be entertainment and shopping. I would just put them all together because I would just categorize them under like the expense that I use. So in my case, because I'm doing a lot of, I love clothes and I love beauty products and I love all the things that I need. So I go shopping. And I think living in New York allows you to have a lot of access to a lot of nice thrift stores. Even as me who is not a student, I could still benefit a lot from going thrift shopping or even selling my clothes at thrift shops and sort of trading with their products, which saved me a lot of money instead of just going to a store to buy a new set of clothing. And also I discovered a lot of nice outlets in New Jersey. And obviously, like in New Jersey, you have to drive everywhere. So I had to go with a friend who had a car. But if you went to New Jersey, like the outlets were there. And also New Jersey is a tax-free state when it comes to certain items. So unless you're buying beauty products and leather goods, I think a lot of clothing were tax-free. And so on an outlet price with no tax, I could profit from getting a lot of cheap stuff, but good stuff, which is a way for me to shop. And also when it came to online shopping, I think it's only since I got to New York that I use Amazon so much because I just found everything on Amazon, and I think everyone does that. But I even had like friends in France who would order stuff from Amazon, which means it could come from their New Jersey warehouse and they're shipping it to somewhere in France, which could take more time. But because I live in a metropolitan like New York area, whatever I ordered, if it wasn't for like pandemic when everyone's like ordering online, obviously things got super quick and safe and time, and whatever you can't find out there and you don't have to like walk everywhere to find something, you could just order online and it will just get there. And so online shopping and thrift shopping and outlet shopping has been great for me, and I didn't have to worry so much about logistics or shipping costs and all of these things, and it's so far been great. In terms of price also, there's tons of ways that you can find cheap but nice quality clothes as compared to like in Korea. I used to work at a department store as a buyer, so I did have some advantages of buying that off of the like sort of discounted rate because I don't have to pay retail, but I would still prefer a discounted rate from a retail price point. So it still was expensive, and I just had like I started at a high standard just because I was working with luxury brands, and so I was like spending all of the money I earned back to like all the clothes and all the shoes and all the bags, and it was just so much spending for me. And then that because I worked in an upscale environment, every time I went out for lunch at work, I would spend like, I don't know, like a lot of money than I should. But like in New York, there's so many ways that you can do things in your own budget. You don't have to be conscious about like, how you dress or what brand you wear. It could be anything of your own choice, as long as you make it work, and you can totally make it work and rock it without having to pay so much money. And so I think in New York that has been great. And I think one thing that I am not so looking forward to moving to France is that I don't think that you will have so much access to those things. But I'll have a baby, so I won't have too much time anyways. So that is all of my 5 points of living in New York. I haven't done so much of these videos, so I'm not sure if I talked about the pit points that you really want to hear about. So if you have something that you really wanted to hear about but I didn't say it, please leave in the comment below and I'll definitely try to answer you guys, because there's so much more that I could share, but I really don't want to make this video so long. But if you ever consider coming to live in New York, I think it's worth a try. It's worth a shot. I think it's the best when you are either single or a couple. As a couple, I think you can save a lot of cost or share a lot of costs. A single, you can just save a lot of cost too, because you just have to pay for yourself. I definitely have no idea as a family with a little infant, but I do hear it's a lot of cost for education, for preschool, for daycare, whatever, which is one of the things that we are deciding to move out from here. So with that, I could probably do another video, but that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm super hungry now. And so, I mean, you know, if you ever are in New York, let me know. And I hope it turns out good for you, well for you. Good luck, and stay safe.